Hi again, everyone. I'm Bob Burg, back for another episode of Go Giver Influencers. Today's episode is Influential Ego. And the ego can be quite influential, both for positive, negative, good or bad. I guess depends how we look at it. And I want to begin by just sharing a story with you. It's an old story, and I very much doubt it ever actually happened, though it should have, because it's a good story. Now, if you've heard this one, because it's an oldie, don't put the punchline in the discussion field, because there's still a lot of people who haven't heard it. And we'll also take the usual lesson and go just a bit deeper with it. So the story's told of the very fancy black tie affair in Washington, D.C. All the big movers and shakers were there, and one of them was a United States senator. And as he sat down at his place setting, he was annoyed to find that there was only one pat of butter next to his roll. And so he looked at the young waiter and very dismissively said, "Young man, bring me some more butter." Well, the young waiter was taken aback and rather offended, but not exactly in a power position to say or do anything. So he said, "Well, I'm sorry, sir. There's a butter shortage tonight, and there's only one pat of butter per guest." Well, the senator was having none of that, and he said, "Well, I don't care about any butter shortage. Bring me some more butter right now." "Well, I'm sorry, sir. There's nothing I can do about it. It's chef's orders, just one pat of butter to a customer." Well, the senator's beside himself. How dare that waiter not cater to his every whim, despite there being a shortage. And he looked at the waiter and he said, "Young man, do you know who I am? I happen to be the senior senator from the state of New Jersey." To which the young waiter, who by this time had had enough, finally said, "Do you know who I am? I happen to be the guy who controls the butter." Well, when we hear that story, we immediately think, and when we think of ego, we think of the senator, who the entitled senator who demanded something, and and yes, he had an ego, certainly, but you know who else did? The young waiter. And with people who are not in a position of power per se, as that young waiter wasn't, rub their ego the wrong way enough, and they will find a way to make life difficult for you, to sabotage things if they can, and for good, understandable reason. That's human nature. It's how people are, and so if the senator had really wanted that extra pat of butter, it would have been very easy for him to have said, "Sir," or to have gotten the young waiter's name first and said, "I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be too much trouble if you could possibly bring me another pat of butter." And I can practically guarantee you that waiter would have done so. When it comes right down to it, 95% of moving a person to a desired action that they may otherwise not have taken on their own, about 95% of that is simply, it comes down to how you make that person feel. Right? If you make them feel good about themselves and good about you and good about the situation, there's a good chance they're going to do it and they're going to feel great about it. Now, should it be that way? I don't know. What do I know? But it just is. It's a saying, there's a saying, you can't fight City Hall. Well, I have an issue with that saying, because you shouldn't have to fight City Hall. The people at City Hall are working for you, the taxpayer. So that's always been a saying that I never quite understood. But that if you've ever tried to get something done at City Hall and faced a bureaucrat who was kind of proud of being a bureaucrat, they may have, really made things difficult for you. And if you got angry, and if you insulted this person, and if you acted in a way that was inappropriate, there's no way you were going to get what you were looking to get, or they're going to make it as difficult for you as they possibly could. However, when you approach this person in a way that honors them and honors their feelings and honors their humanity, now it's a whole different story. So I'm going to just suggest, no, you can't fight City Hall, but you can work within City Hall in the proper and appropriate way, and usually be that rare person who does get the results you want. Again, it's simply a matter of understanding that people have an ego, and that ego, just like emotion, we've talked about it before, can actually rule a person and be the driver of decisions. Let's take a look at who is on here. We see Linda joined, and Sherry Matthews. Hey, Sherry Matthews had a great honor. She was named, and I read it earlier, and I'm sorry, I'm not exactly remembering what it was. Sherry, posted if you don't mind. She's a great entrepreneur, and she's been on the podcast before. She's amazing what she's invented, what she's done, but she was given an entrepreneurial honor. I can't remember, but do me a favor, Sherry, post that if you don't mind. Hi, Stephanie. Oh, Jeff Shore, who was on a few weeks back. He joined, Ron joined, and that's fantastic. Alicia, great to see you. So now let's talk about the ego a little bit more. See, in most teaching, whenever ego is mentioned, it's talked about in a negative way. Oh, that person's ego is really something, or wow, they are totally ego-driven, or wow, could their ego be any bigger? And of course, that's never a good thing when that's the case. But ego in and of itself, just like gravity, just like many things, ego just simply is. It's intrinsically neither good nor bad. The ego literally is the I. That's what ego means. It's that part of ourself that understands that we are a unique individual, that we are separate from all other things and people. Now, when I say that can really ruffle some feathers, because it's a little politically incorrect to say we're separate from others, because we all hear, well, aren't we all just one universal consciousness? Well, first of all, I think we probably, in the big picture, we probably are. That's just my thought. We've heard of, unified theory, and the of course, Napoleon Hill's the mastermind and cosmic consciousness, that field where we can actually give and receive information on I believe personally in all that. But none of that conflicts with the part that with the fact that as human beings in our earthly existence, we also we live as individuals. We all have our own goals, our own dreams, our own ways of seeking happiness. So yeah, it's not an either or. I think it's an and. And so that ego is that individual in us. Now, so ego, when we control it, we can really gear it to do good things. We can accomplish great things with it. Here's one of my favorite sayings. This was from Muhammad Ali. He said, "I hated every minute of training, but I said to myself, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion." Now, to me, that's taking ego, right? He had a desire to be a champion, to be great, to be something special. And he did it. And he put his ego to good use. Now, there was a little, it was a little bit fear-based, right, in a way, because he wanted to stop training. He didn't want to work that hard, maybe, but he knew if he was going to be great, if he was going to be the greatest, which he often called himself, he was going to have to suffer physically now in order to get the results he wanted. And here's a guy who not only did great things for himself, but look at how he touched so many lives in the world. So in this case, the ego served a great purpose. It was very positive. There's people who have invented things that really helped humanity, and they did it out of their own sense of ego. And that's okay. That was one way they pursued happiness. Again, as long as it's not a negative, that's fine. Now, when it is negative, when it's a matter of it, being I want to be better than someone else, or my way of having an ego is to put someone else down. Okay, now it's a negative. ancient storytelling, and you've probably heard this before. There's the human being and the horse, right? And the horse is the human being is the the logical mind. The horse is the ego. Now, what is a horse? Well, a horse is a big, majestic, powerful beast, right? And if the horse controls the rider, there's big trouble, right? Because that horse, you can't handle it. It will take you all over the place. It will be downright dangerous. However, if the human being is able to control the horse, if our logic, if our positive sense of self is able to control the ego, now we can direct it so that we can accomplish great things. Hi, Shmuel. Great to see you. And I think Ron, I saw a little bit earlier. It's wonderful to have everybody here with us. We are talking about the influential ego. Did I say that earlier, that was the name of the episode? I think I did. I hope I did. If not, this episode is Influential Ego, but I think I did. So let's talk about Ray Dalio for a moment. Ray Dalio, you may be familiar with him. He has a new book out called Principles. I actually read his book when it was an online book. I also have the new book. I haven't read it yet, but I read it in its original form, and it was a huge difference maker for me. Ray Dalio is the billionaire founder of the Bridgewater Fund. Very, very, very successful. He's also now a philosopher and so forth, and a very wise man. And here's what Ray Dalio said. I believe that the biggest problem that humanity faces is an ego sensitivity to finding out whether one is right or wrong and determining what one's strengths and weaknesses are. Let me go through the first part of that right now. I believe that the biggest problem that humanity faces is an ego sensitivity to finding out whether one is right or wrong. Now, you might say, okay, Bob, I understand that that's important, but is that really the biggest problem that humanity faces, an ego sensitivity? What about something like hunger, massive hunger in a third world or developing nation? And what I would say is this: the hunger in that third world or developing nation is the symptom of the problem being ego. And here's why I say this. There is enough food to feed the world many times over. There's no one who has to starve. There's technology now that if people were left even to their own devices, never mind the help and the aid that is given to third world and developing nations, they could not only survive, they could thrive. But the despotic leaders, if you can use the word leaders in that country, the despots, the tyrants, they actually steal the food. They and their cronies steal the food that is given as aid, and they distribute it among themselves. They resell it, and they make a fortune from it. I'm going to suggest that's ego at work, because these despotic tyrants, how much do they need to live a wealthy existence that they would actually feel that they have to keep their own people poor and impoverished and starving and suffering? That's ego at work. We see ego in so many places where people think they know more than other people, and that they somehow have a right to rule over other people. To me, I'll just, you look at anybody who will create laws that make people do things that they don't want to do when it's not harming anyone else. Okay. I look at someone like, I'll just give you a thought, right here, if I may. Look at Michael Bloomberg. Okay. And this has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat or anything, nothing like that. Okay. It has to do with ego. Michael Bloomberg, when he was mayor, put a huge tax on sodas when someone bought a certain size drink, because he felt sodas are bad for people. Well, sodas probably are bad for people, but is it one demagogue's legitimate right to tax it, tell people that they can't because it's for their own good. And of course, what happens is it ends up hurting the poor who can't afford to pay that tax, but still want the product. But that's another thing. But that's ego. That's, we see that so often with politicians, sometimes who have good intent. But when they think that they have a right to tell someone else how to live their lives, as long as that other person isn't infringing upon anyone else's rights, then we've got to kind of chalk it up to ego, and ego not in a good way. Let's look at, here's another thing. I was thinking about economics, okay? And economics is an interesting thing because economic principles are basically pretty simple. People make them difficult, but they're pretty simple. But years ago, back in the 20th century, there was a man by the name of John Maynard Keynes. He came about in the first quarter of the century or so and began to get famous because he put forth an idea that economists could really run an economy, that they could centrally plan an economy, that they could basically do certain things that would cause the economy to do certain great things for everyone. Well, here's the interesting thing. Economists fell in love with him. They became what are called Keynesian economists, which basically, said you should be controlling the economy because you know better than the billions of people in the world doing trillions, literally, of transactions every day. I say that a little tongue in cheek, because then you had people like Friedrich Hayek, who said, no, economists don't really know anything more than anyone else about how people should live their life. So understand economic principles, but stay out of it. In his book, The Fatal Conceit, Hayek said, the curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they can imagine they can design. People have been trying to centrally plan economies, well, beginning with the communists and the socialists. Doesn't work out. Seems like it should sometimes, right? Because aren't there certain people who just know everything? It turns out not really. There was a great commercial years ago talking about ego and how much respect I have for this person. He was a very, very well-known, highly respected economist. And he was on in this commercial, and it was the real person, but it was in a commercial. And he was on stage and there were thousands of people there. And the person asked him, Mr. So-and-so, I just can't remember his name. What is this stock going to do in 10 years? And everybody was listening, like one of those E.F. Hutton commercials, right? Everybody was listening to what he was going to say. And he said, Dave, I don't know. And it was like, hallelujah, because no, of course he doesn't know. Nobody knows. And you've got all these people on TV telling you they know what's going to happen when they don't. There's a lot of ego at work here. It's interesting. I remember James Altucher, who's written some wonderful books, and he has been a pundit on TV. He was for a while, and he was told by one of the producers, they said, regardless of the question you're asked, if you ever answer by saying, I don't know, you'll never be asked back. And I thought, what a shame that is. Because I think what this world needs more are wise people who say, I don't know. That's the ultimate, letting our ego work in the right ways, saying, I don't know. Because a lot of the time we don't know. We think we know, but we don't necessarily know. I wanted to tie that into something, and I'm trying to remember right now what that is. Oh yeah, I don't know if any of you, if you heard the podcast interview I did with a woman by the name of Annie Duke. I think this was about maybe 5 or 6 months ago. Annie Duke has a book out, and the name of her book, I actually do not remember, and I apologize. Shannon, I think that's in the notes. If you can put that in the discussion field. But we did the title of the interview I did with her, the segment was called Wanna Bet. And what she did, she was talking about making decisions and how to make the best decisions. And even the best decisions won't always necessarily have the desired result. But when you make the right decision, you increase the odds of the result being correct. And one of the things she said is that, there's so many people who provide opinions without really having the knowledge behind them. We see this all the time on social media, right? But we see it all the time in real life, IRL, as well. And what she said, and this was so great, and I've been doing this since I read this in her book, and her book is absolutely Thinking in Bets. That's the name of it. Yes, Thinking in Bets is her book. I can't recommend that book highly enough. It is absolutely a book that will help you, as it's helped me, make better decisions. Oh, just brilliant. And what she said is, before any time you're about to make a statement, a positive state, a statement of positivity, one that you're absolutely saying as though it's fact, ask yourself the question, want to bet? Yeah. What if the bet was $50, $50 or $100, that before you say it, that you had to be right in what you're saying or posting or tweeting or sharing, or you would owe that money? And I've been doing that since. And I'll tell you, the ego takes a hit sometime, because you say, so, I was just about to say something that I don't know that it's right. And I think that's very, very important. Fantastic book by Annie. Dalio also talked about identifying what one's strengths and weaknesses are. Hey, we would love to think we have certain strengths, but what if we don't? Well, if our ego gets in our way, then we kind of ignore that we don't have that strength. And we said, no, I'm good at that. No, I can do that. But what if we can't? One of the things Dalio talked about, which I thought was so brilliant, was that people who succeed in life, they seek out truth. They do anything they can to cut through everything that's not truth, which means we ask questions, we check our premises. It means we check our ego, and that if it's something we don't want to hear, it doesn't matter. Our goal is to seek out the truth. And that when we operate from truths, now we place ourselves in a position to, again, do those things that are going to have maybe the best decisions that end up with the most desirable results. Let me take just a quick second and look at who is here. Sylvia, oh, thank you for those kind words. Linda, thank you she was mentioning the Annie Duke episode. Nyla or Neela, and I'm not sure, and I apologize. Nyla Whitfield. I love Bob Burg. Oh, that's very nice. Kerry Daigle. I remember that. Kerry's a great guy, great friend, fantastic person. I see Cindy Lou Reagan Hester there. Thank you for your kind words. So these are all, things dealing with the truth, always seeking truth. And so we've got to be able to put our ego aside and get to the truth. So in John David Mann's and my latest book, The Go-Giver Influencer, principle number 5 is to let go of having to be right. And this is, of course, the most counterintuitive principle in the story. And people will often ask during interviews, does that have anything to do with ego? And the answer is, it has everything to do with ego. Because when we can let go of our attachment to being right, which again doesn't mean we don't want to be right, that we don't desire to be right, that we don't prefer to be right, that we're not going to prepare as best we can to be right. No, it just means we lose the emotional attachment to being right. It means that we're able to deal with those ego issues, and we're able to say, maybe I'm not 100% right, or maybe I'm all wrong. Maybe I should get more information. Maybe I should respectfully listen to this other person's point of view, which doesn't mean I have to agree with them, but I can listen, and I can open up to the idea that I might not be right. And this was, by the way, a bugaboo with me, because when I was younger, and I've gotten better at it in my old age, but it's still something I have to fight. I just hated to be wrong. I was that person who, even when I was proven wrong, I would find a way to kind of fight it. That was certainly not acceptable, and it was not productive for me or for those I dealt with. So when we let go of having to be right, here's what happens. We're able to allow the relationship between ego and emotion to be a positive one. I want to read something to you. This is something that Dan Goleman wrote in his book, Emotional Intelligence. This is, to me, it was absolutely brilliant. He wrote, "The emotional mind takes its beliefs to be absolutely true, and so discounts any evidence to the contrary. That's why it's so hard to reason with someone who is emotionally upset. No matter the soundness of your argument from a logical point of view, it carries no weight if it is out of keeping with the emotional conviction of the moment." He then adds, "Feelings or emotions are self-justifying with a set of perceptions and proofs all their own." Well, this also brings us, I mean, that's powerful, emotional intelligence, Dan Goleman. So this brings us to the relationship between ego and cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias. What are those? Well, cognitive dissonance is when something that we believe, something in that we hold as a value, something in the way we are, is upset because we come across some new information that disturbs that and says it's not the truth. Okay, cognitive, of course, is thinking or believing. Dissonance is an incongruency. Okay, so let's go back to politics for a second. Let's say you really believe in a certain politician, and you have gotten behind this politician for years. You've sung their praises for years, and you believe in this politician. And then a report comes out, and by the way, I'm not talking about anyone in particular. This is totally generic. A report comes out that this person has done something horrible in their personal life. And it's something you cannot distinguish from politics. It's something that was a really bad thing. Well, there's a real dissonance now, right? Because you had such belief about this person. You held them in such high esteem. And now something comes to light that is just really bad or evil. Well, now you have a problem. That's cognitive dissonance. Because what you can do, if your ego gets in the way, you're going to just find a way to ignore it. Just like Dan Goleman was saying, right? You're going to find a way to totally ignore it. And you'll go on having belief about this person and feeling the same way, even though you know it's not true. And it's difficult to live that way and be happy, okay, in that particular area. Confirmation bias is related to that. It's sort of a cousin. Confirmation bias says that that when you come across some new information that confirms your already held beliefs or biases, you'll accept it as true. But if not, you'll simply ignore it. Again, this is ego coming into play, right? Because we are making a choice here. For most people, it's unconscious, but it's a choice. It's a choice whether to live in truth or whether to live, with a lie. I'll share some cognitive dissonance on my part, and this is very personal to me because I'm still working through it. Cognitive dissonance. Okay, I am an animal lover. I'm an animal fanatic. A lot of people know that about me. That's no surprise. But I have never been a vegan or vegetarian. Well, a few years ago, it started to really hit. I'd never really given it much thought, by the way. Just hadn't thought about it until a few years ago when I really started to discover how badly animals are treated in the process. And when I just, came to realize that, I'm eating a living thing that, had no choice. And so now, by the way, I'm not making a statement about whether one shouldn't, but that's not the issue. Only my own cognitive dissonance. Okay. So my belief was, yeah, it's okay. I can love animals, but still eat them and so forth. And then when I kind of realized I'm not right, again, my opinion, that I'm not right in doing this, yet I love to eat and love foods that do come from animals. Well, there's a real cognitive dissonance there. If I'm going to accept the truth of the situation, that there is a dissonance, uh, I've got to now deal with that. Okay. Now, I have just between us, I mean, I've cut down a lot of the meat I eat. And I don't buy anything that to wear that's animal that I can possibly help. And again, my eating has changed, that I've gone much more vegetarian, not even close to vegan yet, but I continue to work at that. But I'll say this every time, and this is why I say I'm working through it. Every time I eat something that is meat or fish or chicken or what have you, even though I do it far less now, I feel guilty about it. There's a cognitive dissonance, and I'm not going to allow my ego to let me live with non-truth regarding my beliefs. Even as I'm doing it, I feel it's wrong. Okay. Now, again, I'm not asking for any, oh, that's okay, Bob, or anything like that. No, it has nothing to do with that. I'm just showing you where cognitive dissonance, when we allow our ego to work effectively, can kind of be uncomfortable. And so we've got to make that choice. Sometimes it's just easier for us to just let the ego say, no, it's okay. Don't think about it. But to me, thinking about it's not an option. So as I'm working through it and going more, I suspect one day I probably will be vegan. I'm still searching for ways to be able to do that and keep strength and doing all those different things, blah, blah, blah. But the cognitive dissonance is there. Okay, so I wanted to end with looking at two common and extremely annoying actions of an ego-based person. And again, I used to do both of these all the time. And that if you do either of these, and I'm not saying you do, but if you do, and you discontinue doing them, you will find yourself to be much better liked and a lot more influential with people. The first is looking for reasons to disagree rather than looking for reasons to agree or to not say anything. I had this habit that when someone would make a statement, I would look for the hole in it. Now, is there ever a time and place for that? Of course, when you're having reasonable scientific discussion or philosophical discussion, and that's understood and you're looking to improve, of course, that's, No, I'm talking about when it served absolutely no purpose to find disagreement with this person. I just did it anyway. I won't say I couldn't help myself. I didn't help myself. And again, I didn't give it much thought. I just did it. So I don't do that anymore. At least I don't think I do. The other one is catching others in a mistake. Somebody makes a statement that is wrong. They didn't take the Annie Duke test by saying want to bet, but they said the statement and it was wrong. And I used to feel compelled to correct them. I would do it politely, but I would correct them. Now, again, is there ever a time and place to do that? Of course there is, but I'm talking about times that it served nobody to do that. And I remember one day rereading Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, where he talked about being at a party where he did that very thing. And it offended the person. And the person who was Dale's friend kind of kicked him under the table to shut up. And he disagreed with Dale and said, no, you're right. And Dale knew the other person was wrong. When they were driving home afterwards, he said to his friend, why did you correct me and agree with that person? You know I was right. And the guy said, no, what purpose did it serve, Dale? Why not just let the person save face? Again, we're not talking about being dishonest, and we're not talking about a situation where we needed to correct gently and tactfully. No, we're talking about situations where it just doesn't do any good. So the questions we can ask ourselves is, and maybe, we can do this over the next week, is what am I doing that maybe my ego is more in control of my thoughts and actions than is good for it to be? How can I be more aware of when my ego is driving me as opposed to when I'm driving my ego, which is the good thing, when I'm in charge of the ego? What about other people? What is this person saying or doing that I can tell is ego driven? And I want to look to see because I want to make sure I don't do that. And that I can, that we can learn from that. So I see Al Dalla. Hey, Al, great to see you. Oh, thank you for your kind comments. And I love all the comments from there's my great friend Niels. Just jumped on. Always enjoy listening. Niels has some great programs out there. What a fantastic teacher and author he is. Hey, Derek. Thank you so much. Sylvia, hi. Sylvia, excuse me. I want to just mention a couple of things. Kathy Tajanel's and I want to thank Shannon, who is running the discussion today. Thank you so much again, Shannon. You're so wonderful. My business partner and great friend Kathy Tajanel. She and I do the infrequent but the Go Giver Entrepreneur Academy live workshops in Orlando. We limit those to 10. We're sold out for this one this July, coming up in a few weeks. We've got the 10. About, I think 6 or 7 of them, I don't recall, had asked after the last one for us to let them know when the new one was, because we limit it to 10. And so I'll just let you know the same thing, that if you're interested in Shannon, if you don't mind just putting the link to the Go Giver Entrepreneurs Academy. Again, we're closed out for this one, but the next one will be in November, either the first or second week, probably the first week. The further away from Thanksgiving, the better it tends to be for people. It will either be in Orlando or in West Palm Beach. So you can let us know about that. I hope you can join us. Let's see. Some of the information from today's Go Giver live program was from my book, Adversaries into Allies. So if you'd like to check that book out, you certainly can. John David Mann's and my newest book, The Go Giver Influencer. Check that out. I believe Shannon will be putting the links on there. And let me just suggest that you join our Go Giver Influencers Facebook group. Those of you who are already in that group, Kathy does such a wonderful job of posting sayings every day from the books, and it elicits some really good discussion. We've got lots of great people on there, so join us there as well. So unless there is anything else, and I'm looking for any questions or comments or what have you, I think we will end it until next week. Until then, this is Bob Burg, and I wish each and every single one of you a great day and a fantastic week. Thank you so much for joining us.